nature of human interaction is influence, right? On the interpersonal level. In this day and age, people only think that a positive influence is one in which it's not on purpose, it's not calculated, it's not thought about, and it just occurs naturally, right? With no forethought. People put a negative connotation on being masculine or being direct or being purposefully influential in the way that you do things, the way you interact with people, outside of the social norms of just the pleasantries that come along with social interaction and being socialized, right? But oftentimes, how people interact with one another when they're socialized has a certain added layer of disingenuousness, right? Being disingenuous, beating around the bush, acquiescing to people, right? These are typically how these things work. Now, what I'll say about it is this. As a man who's dominant, there's going to be a way that you interact with a woman, right? With how you interact with that woman, you are going to pretty much teach and train her certain things about how you like to be treated. But the training isn't always about her just developing hard skills. Some of it is about hard skills, right? Like if you like your head a certain way, you like her to ride you a certain way, you like her to cook for you a certain way, you're particular about specific things, then those are the things that you can teach her. But the foundation for teaching is desire and respect. That's what creates the feminine submissiveness, where a person's malleable to the way that they want to give up control. That comes from intrinsic desire, right? When your desire level is too low, then you have to logically use your social battery to create and to allocate the energy that you're going to be dispersing through your behaviors. Very important concept to understand. So one thing that I've learned in life, and I learned this naturally, but I also study psychology, right, is Pavlov's classical conditioning, right? With the use of Pavlov's classical conditioning, it's something that you can use to create fetishes, right? Sexually transmitted fetishes, sexually transmitted kinks, right? Through verbal, right? Through your words, through your actions, through the way that you do things, right? Pavlov's, one of his initial experiments was that he had a dog, right? When the food was present, the dog would salivate, right? The dog's mouth would drool. And then eventually he would get to the point where he would ring a bell when there was about to be food. Then the dog's mouth would uncontrollably begin to salivate when it would hear the bell, right? Now, along with that comes eventually the dog would salivate without the bell being rung. Now, a similar type of classical conditioning was used when it came to how a person can develop fetishes, right? They did this study with boots, right? I don't remember exactly which study it was, but what they did was they would have people have sex. They would bring boots in the vicinity of a sexual encounter, right? And then eventually they would make the boot a bigger aspect of it. And then eventually the individual would have the ability to be sexually attracted to boots without the access to sex. Understand what I'm saying? Very powerful concept. So when it comes to developing sexual fetishes, when it comes to anchoring, right? When it comes to having certain words or phrases that you use with a woman that anchor a certain response, that is not on purpose for her, right? It's not a conscious or a controllable thing. It's just a certain response that'll come up. These things work. Like if you ever see those men who may say the B word, say bitch around their woman or call her one, and then she gets aroused, she gets turned on. That's because he's anchored in the B word. One, he may have brought it in her vicinity, having that as a regular aspect of his everyday vernacular, right? And then after having that as a regular part of his everyday vernacular, to a certain extent, he may use that word in the bedroom when she's having an orgasm, when she's experiencing a high level of pleasure, and then give her greater pleasure through using that. And a woman who just naturally has a certain degradation kink right, degradation fetish, right? These people, sometimes how it works is oftentimes a woman has a submissive sexual ego, right? And everybody has both a dominant and a submissive sexual ego. Which one you're in primarily is what mode you're in within that aspect of the sexual polarity quadrant, right? So if you have a submissive sexual ego, your primary focus is giving up control to experience greater pleasure, right? And when you are a dominant, you are sacrificing some pleasure in exchange for the greater level of control. So when you're making that sacrifice, there's a lot of different things that come along with it. One thing that can come along with it is that the more outlandish, the more outside of a person's general way that they view themselves within their social mask, their social image, the further you can take an individual. Sometimes it's called a corruption kink, like someone who's into getting someone into new things. I have a corruption kink, and this is why I have a pretty good understanding of classical conditioning when it comes to especially like BDSM. When you have like a corruption kink or a degradation kink, a lot of times it comes from this place of your dominant ego liking control and liking someone to desire or respect or trust you enough to be willing to give up that type of control, to put themselves in a scenario that would otherwise be viewed as disrespectful or degrading. And a submissive ego wants pleasure to the extent that being taken to places outside of their general everyday way of viewing themselves is something that turns them on the most. So there's like certain aspects of BDSM and everyday relationships that people have and they don't even know it, right? Like teasing, that's an aspect of BDSM, right? Consensual non-consent, that's an aspect of BDSM, right? Choking, smacking the ass, spitting in the mouth, pulling the air, thumbing the ass. These are all different aspects of BDSM. Pinning a woman down as she's having an orgasm. Edging, right? Forced orgasms, post-orgasm torture. These are all different aspects of kink and BDSM lifestyles that a lot of regular people do or vanilla people do that they don't recognize are aspects of BDSM. Right? Now, anchoring is oftentimes when a woman is in that very emotionally vulnerable and mentally vulnerable place called subspace, right? Or she's in that place where she's near an orgasm or at an orgasm. And then you send certain commands, you send certain words, you plant certain seeds. And it almost works like sexual transmutation. There's certain seeds that you plant during that time that resonate in a woman's subconscious mind when her defenses are down. And through that process, you anchor in certain things that you want to happen. But sometimes it's about planting a seed of a trigger word that when that woman hears that trigger word, if she is close enough to a high level of respect and desire, that's going to trigger sexual desire. See, one reason why men might use the word bitch is to test where a woman's energy is, right? If she's in a high state of desire, especially if you anchored it in, then when she hears the word bitch, it's going to trigger sexual desire. It's going to trigger thoughts of moments and flashbacks to moments where you were sexually dominating her in a way that she enjoyed it. And this is something that can permeate outside of the bedroom into a woman's everyday behavior with you. So sometimes when a man says bitch, he's not degrading or putting the woman down, or he is degrading her, but it's not for the sake of dominating her in a way that is trying to hurt her, but it's more so a reminder of the space and the place that she enjoys being with him the most. Right? And that's for a woman who's submissive with you. Right? A woman, her favorite place of being with you could be right by your side as an equal. And another woman's favorite place to be with you could be sitting under you, like your baby girl, right? She wants to sit under you like a little girl looking up at daddy, right? She may want to be behind you, like looking at your back, looking at you having a strong, sexy back that she sees as you're walking, and she just loves to look at that, right? Or of having you watch her, right? Having you observe her, having you be slightly very, very observant of her behavior and of her mindset and of her mood, knowing what mindset she's in that gets her into the highest place of receiving pleasure. And if your idea of how you should interact with one another gives her more pleasure than her idea of what that means, then she may trade her social programming in for your program. That's when a woman becomes your submissive. Now, she could be your submissive before that, but that's more so cooperation, and it may be cooperation for pleasure. So that's at least a reactive sex drive. That's a decent level of, interacting. But when she leaves out of that place of mind where she's highly aroused, that's when the true her comes out. So that means if it's just like a fling and you're fucking with the woman and she's down for anything when she's horny, but when she separates from you and she's no longer in your presence, she begins to return back to a regular state of mind where a woman can get like her version of post-nut clarity. And if you take a woman, like let's say you take a woman to subspace and then she experiences sub-drop, a woman can catch Jesus on you, catch religion on you overnight, right? Now, I personally don't believe that the modern concept of premarital sex is biblical, or that the definitions of fornication, when you look into the Greek and the Hebrew, that has a context that includes two people who aren't married having sex with each other. Like, although I don't believe that, that's still what her social programming would tell her about it. Like if you're dealing with like a religious woman. So when she leaves out of it, unless she feels safe to stay in that feminine energy with you, and unless in that place and in that time when she's there, you'll tell her things that are congruent and very consistent based on your character, based on logic, that break down some of those walls, those barriers, those mindsets, those ideologies, and then reforms them. You break her down to build her up. Like if that's the case, then she may trade her social programming in for your program. That's how two people are on the same page, right? Because there's always going to be somebody who wants somebody more than the other person. There's always going to be somebody who wants sex more than the other person. Always someone who wants love or a relationship more than the other person. That's the nature of interactions. Most human interactions are not 100% equal. That would be like masculine submissive. With your friends, you take an equal mentality because that's how you're socialized. You try not to dominate your friends if you're a good person. That's just not your mentality, right? But at the same time, sometimes those things still come out. But you can use different things and use classical conditioning to give a woman your fetishes. So like, let's say I get a woman very aroused. Understand this, the more aroused a woman is, the more parts of her body that have a high level or a high concentration of nerve endings can then begin to become erogenous zones, right? So you can use that to open a woman up to new orgasms. And oftentimes this is a little bit different, but let's say you're planting a seed, you get her aroused, you stimulate her in areas that typically would stimulate her, but then you also shift the focus without giving her an orgasm yet, depending on how her body's set up. Because she's a one and done type of woman, then going straight to what typically gives her orgasm may keep her from having one. So it's like, if you're with a woman who's never had a vaginal orgasm for penetration, then for some women, if you're giving them a clitoral orgasm, they're done. They don't plan on having one, right? And they're not even trying to. For some women, they can have multiple, so it turns them on more and it prepares them. It also depends on how those two things are connected to each other in the woman's mind and in her mentality and how she feels about sex, how she thinks about it, right? Very important concept. But you can get her aroused, plant a seed, stimulate the spot. When she builds trust that you can actually get her there, she's going to be more comfortable letting go. Some women don't let go because every time they felt like they've started to get close to it, it never followed through. She didn't know how to open her mouth and say, don't stop. Or she didn't get close until she felt like the man was getting close, right? If she didn't get close until she felt like the man was getting close, then it might be, another 2 to 4 minutes if she's never had a vaginal orgasm penetration before she actually releases. So she says, like, don't stop. And you, after you say you're getting close and you got about another 30 to 5 seconds left until you're about to bust, then, sometimes you might have to let that play up for a little while to where she thinks that's what's going down. Then one of the only times I'd advocate lying to a woman, tell her you're getting close a few minutes early. Keep up some of your grunts, some of your moans a little bit. And then get her there. Make sure you're in a position where you're right on the spot. Right? Make sure you communicate with her. And this is something you can do too to help women have orgasms, is to get in a position and tell them to adjust their body until you're hitting directly on their spot. Because you also want to make sure that you're not in a position that takes so much energy and stamina from you that you get disillusioned and you lose the motivation to continue stroking if she starts to get close, right? Where you might burn out. So make sure their position is comfortable for you as well, right? But then you keep going until she busts. Keep digging until she busts, right? And that's what you do. But you can share your fetishes with a woman to where she develops a fetish for something as well by giving her validation, right? Giving her validation for an area of her body that she's not used to. And this kind of works almost like a trick on the mind, because if you do it when she's aroused, then it's something that can typically turn her on. If she's highly attracted to you, it kind of works like the halo effect, right? If it's a situation where it's something new, it's exciting, you hit her hard, you hit her fast, you come in with it, and you show such a, let's say you bait and counter. It's different than a bait and switch. A bait and counter is where you put yourself out there in a way that could be interpreted as submissive, right? And then the woman tries to say something that's dominant, or you say something to where a woman can take it as you being a fake dominant, right? And being bold, and she tests your boldness, and then you stand firm on what you're about. The fact that you accept yourself on that level, it shows a certain level of security. See, oftentimes the difference between being bold and trying to throw a Hail Mary is that when you're bold, you can stand on what you say, and you just accept and embrace whatever comes with it. And if you really know what you're doing, you can flip it, you can create a motif. There's a lot of different aspects to it. So I think these are just some things to understand that a lot of men do not understand. But I've used this, and that's part of my corruption kink, right? It's like getting a woman to get into my kinks and my fetishes. And oftentimes it's good to use a certain level of classical conditioning with it, like behavioral psychology. A lot of men don't understand that his moans and his groans and his undivided attention and his focus, these things are what validate and stroke a woman's dominant ego. Now, there's a way to flip on this. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to break it down, right? Because that makes her feel attractive, it makes her feel desirable, it makes her feel in control. But you can use these things in a calculated manner to where you give her moans and groans, your undivided attention, your focus, as she's doing things that you like, or doing things that you gave her instructions on. Let's say a woman's giving you head. While she's giving you head, she's doing techniques, her own techniques, and you're feeling it some. You let her go for a little while, then you tell her how you want it done. You give her little minor instructions, and you build upon each other until she's getting you with the double fist yuck yuck, spitty slurpy, tongue swirly, poppy, twisting hands, super sloppy, extra mouth sauce, 5,000. If you know how to teach that, then as the woman does more of the things that you ask her to do, you give her the validation. You give her the moans, the groans. So when she is doing these things because she wants your approval in those areas, especially if you're more so cold or silent in moments where she's not doing things the way that you think is the right way, all right, for a little while, and indifferent, then that indifference is going to cause her to desire your validation, want to desire, right, to please you. Because someone having the ability to affect the way that you feel is some level of respect, right? Now, this isn't the full idea or definition of respect. It's not. But what this idea of respect is just desiring somebody's approval, which means that whether you like something or don't like something affects the way that I feel in this moment. So that means that if you can give her a slight low of maybe feeling just a little bit incompetent with what she's doing for you or with you, not through trying to tear her down, but just through indifference, and then you give her some instructions, or she does something that you planted a seed about, which shows that she listened, then you give her the validation, then you give her the moans, the groans. Or if you have very good orgasm control, that's where you give her the orgasm. Then that woman is attached to the validation of you being satisfied sexually. Right? Now, if you can connect that to her own submissive sexual ego, right? And that's kind of where it starts to get there, where she's in her submissive sexual ego. She becomes malleable to the way in which she tries to satisfy you, right? And that her desire level gets high enough. She gets very aroused, especially if you're using edging, the primer, principle, pleasure, denial. Then it can get to the point where the combination of her arousal level causes whichever area of her body that she's using to become an erogenous zone. So which means that if she's giving you head, her mouth can become something that you start talking to in her ear. You start talking to her while she's doing it, like that dick feel good in your mouth, don't it? Right? And when she starts thinking about it, you're planting a seed. Right? And as you're planting that seed, she starts getting to the place where she starts to envision, imagine, and experience the pleasure from what she's doing. So that's the 9 level of sexual attraction, right? And in that place, she can damn near have an orgasm from giving you head. She might be able to have an orgasm from you sucking her toes or from giving you a foot job, right? Right? There's different things that can take place. So you can use these things. Like, let's say you want to anchor in a foot fetish, then suck her toes while you're giving her an orgasm. I'm just saying. Like, let's say you're hitting it, her legs up on your shoulders, you put the feet in your face as she's getting close. She's turned on, she's looking at you like, damn, this dude kind of nasty. It's like, he really is down for whatever. And she starts feeling that way, and she starts thinking that. But then she's aroused enough to where her feet is a place with a high level of nerve endings. She's getting validation in a place that she's not used to getting validation for if she's not used to that lifestyle. Right? And then if you're doing that while you're giving her an orgasm, then she's going to attach that to the orgasm itself. So in a lower level, it's going to arouse her, especially if she's going to like it because she knows you like it. But then on a higher level, some women can get to the point of having an orgasm from a foot rub, right? Or at least getting very aroused or wet, right? All these things play a part. All these things go together. Let's say it's exhibitionism. You start tapping into her submissive ego. Then certain public activities. It ain't got to be super public, but there's a way that you can go about it to create the effect that you desire, right? It's just like the thought of getting caught. It creates a rush, right? So let's say you do orgasm control and you do forced orgasms. One thing that can get a woman sometimes is if she feels like she's in a rush, she's being rushed, right? Because it's like this type of dominance is control, right? So let's say you get her very aroused. You know how long it takes her to orgasm. And then you say, I'm going to give you 1 minute of strokes. You get your nut or you don't. But you can do it in a way that's a little bit more sexy, a little bit more arousing than that, right? And you might give her 1 minute stroke. You might eat it for 30 seconds. This is part of the edging. You get her as close as you can get her. And then you tell her that's how much time she has. That rushed feeling, that's kind of what comes along with quickies, right? When a woman's desire level, her arousal level is high enough to where she doesn't need a lot of build up to get it off. See, that's when you can start having more spontaneous sex, right? When you take her to subspace and she doesn't see the energy that she pours out through desire as pouring out of her social battery. It then becomes an escape from her duties, responsibilities, and obligations. Then a woman can work a full-time job and still be sexually submissive to you. Because let's say she's in a dominant position in her life where she has to be dominant all the time in regular life and masculine all the time in regular life. So for her, she's tired of having to control herself and being in control all the time. So she wants to give up that power to someone who she desires and respects. When a woman gets to that space, then oftentimes she no longer is a quickie 15-30 minute sex type of woman. She can do it. She can have 3-minute 2-minute sex with you, because if she knows she can get an orgasm quickly, then she's going to be more inclined to want to have quickies with you, right? And if she knows you can too, that's another thing. If you can't bust quick enough, then you might cause her to get disillusioned with quickies, because it's going to make her feel like her pussy ain't good if it take you 20 minutes to get a nut every single time. I've had to learn that the hard way. Right? I had to learn that the hard way. But you got to be able to do that too. But then you can also have marathon sex, quickie sex, right? Exhibitionist sex. There's different things you can do, right? You can put nudes or feet pics, things like that, as part of your protocols. You give her praise for, you give her validation. And really it's about rewarding good behavior. So if that's a behavior that you set up and you frame as a good behavior that you reward, right? That when she does, and she does it well, you let her know you appreciate her. She get that atta girl, that pat on the head, that good girl. She needs that. She craves that on a regular basis from somebody. So when she wants it from you and she respects you as a man, then she knows what she has to do to get it. But after a while, she can start getting to those things herself. Realize that when she puts extra effort in, that you give her extra praise, extra validation, and pleasure, right, sexually. Then it becomes one of those things where the mindset makes a shift. To sometimes, that becomes one of the things she likes about herself as well. So let's say it's the foot fetish thing, right? Then that becomes something that she likes to put emphasis on. She starts wearing flip-flops more. She starts getting toe rings, anklets, all those different things, right? Let's say that's something that happens. Now it gets turned on and aroused by what happens when her feet are exposed. So she might tease you with them. She might do different things because she knows what she's going to get out of that, right? And I've dealt with women before who wouldn't want to deal with somebody who didn't have a foot fetish after dealing with me, right? It's just different things that come along with it, right? Especially if you can extend out into giving her like a foot rub after a long day, some shit like that. But just sharing your fetish, sharing your kinks. Some things are about the social image. Like let's say you have a kink or a fetish for involuntary bodily functions. So you like to make a woman squirt. You like to give a woman crygasms. And you also don't mind if a woman throws up here and there when she's, putting it all the way in her neck. Now, she's not going to do that every time. But if that's anchored in a certain way, she gets used to you taking her places she wasn't expecting to go on, like when she got there. And she's more focused on you than her own social programming. Then when you bring that up about the deep throat and she's like, what if I throw up? And you're like, I don't care if you throw up. All right, cool. You can spit that out and get back to work. Or you could just say something a little bit more slick than that, right? But you be like, man, shit, it almost turns me on. To be honest with you, you know what I mean? Like, you could paint that picture for her. She's feeling you. She's submissive with you in that moment, in that energy, in that space. She's opened up and receptive to you. Then she's going to start visualizing it. She might go look for it online. She might think it's nasty, a little bit gross at first. But that energy can start to shift around into, wow, this is a way that I can lose control, and he's not going to judge me for having involuntarily bodily functions. There's plenty of times when I was younger where a woman said she was close. I didn't know. I thought she was hurting. I didn't know what was going on. She started moving around funny, wincing and stuff. And then I asked her, like, afterwards, she'd be like, yeah, I thought I was going to pee. And I'm like, bitch, that was squirt. You robbed me of this opportunity. Like, on some real shit. So it's just like certain things you have to be cool with that just come along with sex. That once you accept those things, a woman feels a whole level of comfortable with you, right? So for me, I'll tell a woman, if she say, oh, I just felt like I was gonna pee, I'm like, listen, if you feel like you're gonna pee when I'm hitting that spot, If you feel like you got to, pee ahead of time. I know you got to pee afterwards anyways, but if you feel like you got to pee while I'm hitting that spot, do what you got to do. I'm going to say you scored it either way. Just let it go. Just let go of control. Just let it happen. See, you have to let a woman know that you accept the negative outcome that could happen to soothe her insecurities about how she might look or how she might feel. Sometimes if you're dealing with a BBW, you can't just beat her down and tear her down about her rolls. You take them rolls, be like, girl, I got some butter for them rolls. Right? You deal with her in a different way. I'm not saying that you can't encourage her to get in better shape if that's what she want to do. But let's just say she has a natural body. It's just a natural body. And then you let her know you like her fupa. Right? You let her know you like the thighs. Right? You let her know you like that wiggle, wiggle, wiggle she got to it. You feel me? You let her know that. And she'll feel a lot more comfortable being naked around you. And then a whole new level is unlocked. See, when women talk about trust and safety, it's often not just physical safety from outward harm. Sometimes that safety is just, will you judge her if she shows you the real her? That's what a lot of it is. And if you let her know that the real her is what sex is to you anyways, then a woman can get to that space where she's in her feminine submissive around you 85, 90% of the time, 95% of the time, right? And when she's not in that space, you can trigger something, use your anchored words, different things you anchored. Like for me, there's been women who are my submissive to where I'll put my hand around their throat. Now keep in mind, I'm not no abusive type of dude. I'm not about to put my hands on a woman. But I would anchor that in during sex. So it's just something about my hand being around the throat or just speaking with a certain level of dominance that will automatically create arousal in a good bit of women that I dealt with. And that's when you get to walk around like King Dingling. So these are some sex tip, dom sub dynamics, right? Classical conditioning, Pavlov's. Understand these different things. All right, study some of this. If you got it, rewatch this video. If this bless you, hit a nigga Cash App, right? $AMARIBALL, and it'll say Coach Brody. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, comment, share with people who you feel like it might benefit or who might could use this information. This is Coach Brody. I'm out.